Ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh. Herman Holst sucks. He sucks and they need to replace him. PlayStation needs to replace that man.
I just wanted some sauce on those zingers.
The birds are furious. All right, everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Rich of reviewtechusa, and I'm going to ask you to make sure you leave a like on this video, leave a comment, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel. I upload content on a daily basis, and tonight I'm actually streaming shirtless the Resident Evil Requiem, the newest Resident Evil game. It's going to be very exciting. I'm going to be there, the birds are going to be there, and I'm going to be shirtless while playing a new survival horror game. Everything I have mentioned here is below in the description and top pin comment. I love you. So as we learned recently, Sony, in one of the worst moves I've seen in gaming history, decided to shut down the incredibly talented Bluepoint Games, which is known for their exceptional remakes, like the remake of Demon's Souls that was released with the PS5 back in 2020. It is a phenomenal remake, and I strongly recommend, if you're into Souls games, to go play that. Well, it seems that some interesting information here, a ton of it, and yes, I'm going to read and give commentary on most of it, about the Bluepoint shutdown was released by an industry insider known as Green Zone Bytes. Now, Green Zone Bytes talked to 4 former Bluepoint employees, and they spilled a lot of tea on the situation that happened over there and all of the stupid projects that Sony got Bluepoint involved in. And they have some devastating news here. I wasn't clickbaiting about if we're ever going to see maybe a sequel to Bloodborne or a Bloodborne remake. Anyway, I spoke to 4 Bluepoint employees, and this is their story on timeline, dates, and code names for projects. End of 2020, Bluepoint ships Demon's Souls, and talks begin with Sony acquisition and working on more original projects. I wish that Sony didn't acquire them. They would still be here. But continuing, Sony did not think the remakes, remasters made enough money, and some people within Bluepoint and Sony wanted to branch out. All heard that Shadow of the Colossus remake lost money, but it was assumed it would, but Shuhei Yoshida wanted to preserve the game. Now, Shuhei Yoshida was the former president of Sony Interactive Entertainment, and you see the difference there? You see when someone's actually passionate about gaming and they make good choices for their platform. Shuhei Yoshida was like, yeah, Shadow of the Colossus, a remake of that, is not going to make money, but you know what? It's a great game and I want to preserve it. That's what someone who's actually passionate about their job in the gaming industry, that's a choice that they make. That's a pro gamer choice, and that's someone who actually cares about the product they put out. I'm not saying Shuhei Yoshida was perfect, but he obviously gives a crap about gaming more than just the bottom line. Now, it goes more into things about Shadow of the Colossus, but I want to get to the other things that happened with Bluepoint, so this video isn't 45 minutes long. It was assumed in the studio that Bluepoint would be remaking Bloodborne after Demon's Souls, which we all thought that too. Everyone thought that, including me. And I remember in my live streams, a lot of people just assumed that if there was going to be a Bloodborne remake, obviously Bluepoint would be behind it. Bluepoint had a design department of 1 to 2 people, but was not sufficient for a full project. Now, here is where it gets damning when it comes to Bloodborne. This is a 2021 quote. In early 2021, after Demon's Souls, studio staff assumed they would work on Bloodborne and started to prepare to. However, they did not get the green light due to internal politics of Bloodborne involving a fragile relationship with FromSoftware, Sony, and the original IP. Sources do not think Bloodborne remake will ever be made due to politics. I'm not misreading there. Now, look, we'll see what happens, but it makes sense. It makes sense. That is one of the most revered, if not the most revered, FromSoftware developed title. Why would it would just print money? Why would you not do a remake of it unless it was impossible to do so? Anyway, continuing here, and it kind of gives away the business model that Sony is really trying to push. Bloodborne was pulled from the table and BP had no project. Bluepoint was assigned to help with Ragnarok support due to Santa Monica Studios needing some help and a combo of other factors. Jim Ryan was pushing live service hard, and Sony had a desire to explore making God of War into an Assassin's Creed style franchise. Oh my God. Oh my God, who the hell wanted that? Franchise would explore different mythologies and characters. Bluepoint was not allowed to make a game with Kratos as Santa Monica Studios / Sony did not trust Bluepoint with that, and it would be too expensive. September 30th, 2021, Bluepoint is bought by Sony. With all that going on, and now you really? I would have backed the hell out of that deal. Bluepoint is then acquired and tasked with coming up with an original project in the God of War universe. The catch was they needed to stretch the content, but Bluepoint employees did not know at the time it was a live service game, a live service God of War. That is the stupidest. Like, if I said that idea to even like a group of friends or in one of my live streams, hey guys, don't you think a live service God of War, that would be a great idea? I would get laughed at. I would have to hide from the internet for a week. And someone thought that that would be a good idea. That is insane. That is absolutely insane. You waste money on that. You waste money on games that look terrible. I was watching some gameplay of it last night of Marathon. And then you shut down Bluepoint, which had so much potential that you just bought a few years ago, Sony. Continuing, they stated a gamble was made by convincing Sony to buy us instead of us looking for funding elsewhere. That was a mistake. Bluepoint. After the acquisition, there was a culture change within Bluepoint, which is a way of saying that the atmosphere started to suck when you went into work every day. In 2022, prototyping begins for Demon's Souls meets God of War, also called CP13. Now again, Bluepoint staff was not told initially that the game was a live service game. Bluepoint still had a minimal design team. Bluepoint did not have a game director for this project, was promised one on loan from Santa Monica Studio, and a couple designers once Ragnarok shipped. Now, once they started working on this stupid God of War live service game, internal issues began to arise, no kidding, and the ones on board with live service were the head chef of Santa Monica Studios, Sony, and Bluepoint. It was unclear whether Bluepoint leadership believed in the project or just doing their best to salvage morale. They didn't believe in the project. There's no way anyone with common sense would believe in a live service God of War games. Like, that's going to have seasons like Fortnite. Did you think any of this through, Sony, or it's just like, here, money, let's just throw it at things because we want to have our Fortnite, but we're going to use the God of War IP to do it? Continuing, about 75% of staff employees, including to sources, were against this move and pushed back against making a live service. After deadlines were not hit, internal strife from employees, the project was canceled by Sony in early 2025. It should have been canceled as soon as it came out of someone's mouth. Now, Bluepoint pitched a Jak and Daxter remake, Resistance remake, which would have been awesome, Shadow of Colossus remaster, bringing game to PS5, updating the graphics and 4 to 6 new bosses, and he will pull some of those from the original PS2. The Bloodborne remake was again pitched, which, Jesus Christ. A small portion of the team worked on it for 2 to 3 months, but Sony pulled the rug. It was never officially greenlit, but they were deep in negotiations, and Bluepoint thought they would make it. They were going to try a Ghost of Tsushima spin-off, Bluepoint, and Sony gave them 5 to 6 months to prototype it to prove they could make it. And the employees at Bluepoint felt it was going okay, even though it was never officially greenlit, and were on track to hit the deadline. Employees found out on February 19th they were being shut down, and Project Black Fang is canceled. Studio's last day is March 2nd, 2026. The games as a service thing, you need to give up on. I know you see the money that Fortnite brings in and other live service games brings in, Sony, but You obviously have no vision for it. Concord was a dud. Marathon, I was watching gameplay of it and it seems absolutely horrendous. That's not your strong point. And if you keep on investing hundreds of millions of dollars into these dead-end projects, hoping that you're going to have a game where you're going to have seasons and continual income from, you got another thing coming to you. Be grateful that Helldivers is working out for you. Now, one thing I will say from a business perspective, Jason Schreier was talking about this, is that behind the scenes, Sony has all but confirmed that they are no longer going to bring single-player exclusives to PC. And what I think happened with that, if this is accurate, and Jason Schreier is usually on point, he used to work for Kotaku, now he works for Bloomberg, is that Sony saw what happened to Xbox. They saw what happened when you devalue the brand and say, hey, you could play your games anywhere. Who needs our hardware? Who needs to be in our ecosystem when you could just buy our games on Steam day one? And it was insane. And that, like, I remember back in 2015, like, I got what Phil Spencer was saying, but I think it was called Xbox Anywhere. But point being is they're saying, oh, our games that are on our console, you can get them on PC day one. And I was like, that's insane. I mean, I get what you're doing. You're trying to go with accessibility here, but if I could play your games anywhere, what the hell am I going to go into your ecosystem for? If I occasionally want one of your games, I'm just going to buy them on Steam. And that is a part of, not all, but a big part of, in my opinion, why Xbox is in the situation it is in now. Is that they bet too early on the games as a service thing, playing your games everywhere, the power of the cloud. And now Xbox is in the hands of a woman who was formerly the head of Core AI over at Microsoft and has no gaming experience. And the thing is, too, if you think about it, Microsoft, even if Xbox fails, they have limitless funds. They're okay. And I really don't think they care that much about Xbox. Sony can't afford to devalue PlayStation. Sony is not the tech giant back in like the 90s and early 2000s and 80s, 1980s, let's keep it real, that they once were. PlayStation is a good chunk of their revenue, and Sony is now synonymous with PlayStation. I remember before they came out with PlayStation, you know, I remember, like, if you went to go get a cassette player, it was a Sony. If you went to go get a TV, you got a Trinitron TV. You got a tube Trinitron TV, and the picture was second to none. And hell, we even had a Sony rear projection big screen TV, and the picture on it looked like it was a tube TV, and that thing was like 65 inches. But that's not the case anymore. People don't even really think about Sony when it comes to TVs, which is amazing. So this is a big deal, and Sony is probably looking at what happened with Microsoft, and they were like, yeah, we can't afford to do that. Microsoft can, and if we keep devaluing our brand and lose PlayStation, we may lose all of Sony. So I'm sure in board meetings behind the scenes, they were like, yeah, no more releases to Steam. Let's stop doing that. Because that would screw them over. If they lose PlayStation, they lose it all. And I think that's a smart move. But back to making a really stupid move, Sony shutting down Bluepoint. I don't really think they are focused right now. And I think Sony, like the rest of the industry, is not sure what the next step is. And they're panicking, and they're afraid to invest money in virtually anything. It's not just Sony, because they're like all these companies are looking for a safe bet, including PlayStation. They're looking for games that are safe bets. And in the end, you turn off a lot of your consumer base, because obviously these safe bets aren't working out for you, Sony. Look at Concord. Concord cost $400 million to develop, and it was a complete bomb. They were trying to make their hero shooter. They were hoping that they were going to get a game that would have seasons, and that's why they let so much money be put into it. And it died almost instantly. That's not your strength, Sony. Your strength is in amazing single-player experiences, and that's what you've always been known for. And to try to step away from that now, okay, you don't want to bring your single-player experiences to other platforms anymore because you realize how important exclusives are, but you're still trying to do this games as a service thing, and that could destroy you too. Putting a ton of money in these failed projects over and over again is going to put you in a tough spot too. Do what PlayStation is known for. Do what made PlayStation successful and invest in single player experiences. You may not get the influx of cash instantly, but you will strengthen the brand and keep it profitable over time instead of risking it all, even though you don't think it's risks, with these live service crap projects that fail and all that money is flushed down the drain. But Sony won't learn until they get their own Fortnite or they ruin PlayStation in the process of trying to do so. This is Rich of Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one.